Okay, this video is about how your essays will be evaluated. Um, we use one rubric to evaluate the essays, and it's the rubric from Lansing Community College's 121 class. And there's another rubric that the class uses as well. This one makes a lot more sense for me in terms of the students being able to interact with it. So this may look a little different from other rubrics you might see from other sections, but it's all the same material and they're all evaluated the same way. I just think that the way this represents it is clearer for students. So essays are evaluated on a 4-point scale. You have to get a 2.0 to pass this class. And the best way to think about this is your essay will get the lowest score in any of these 4 categories. Okay, so if you think about the category of content, structure, style, and mechanics, your lower score in any of these areas will drive the score for the essay. And some students, that doesn't make sense to them because they say, well, you should average it. Well, if you have great ideas, but you've got really terrible mechanics, it doesn't matter how good the ideas are. The mechanics will drive the evaluation of the essay. By the same token, your mechanics are perfect, but your ideas are terrible. It doesn't matter how good your mechanics are if your ideas are poor. So it is the worst scoring aspect of your essays that will drive the score. And so students really want to work across the board then in terms of content, structure, style, mechanics to get the highest score possible. In many ways, there's not a final exam in this class, but in many ways, this rubric would be the final exam. I would give it to you, and you would be able to talk to me about each element of the rubric and where it is in your writing, and more importantly, your understanding of what it means. So if I said to you, okay, please explain to me what is a topic that is extremely well selected for a college level audience. Now, at this point in the class, you ought to be able to say really quickly, oh, it's got to be something you know well. So either you already knew it because you lived through it, or you've studied it intensively to write about it at the college level. You got to tell people what they already don't know. You can't be obvious. And lastly, it's got to be relevant. There's got to be public conversations about it. You got to be entering a current conversation about this topic. So that kind of awareness of what each part of this rubric means is what you need to have by the end of the class. Now, early on in the class, there's big parts of this rubric I haven't even covered, I haven't even taught. So, usually in the opening drafts, students are not getting above a 2-point. Usually in opening drafts, I'm able to get students maybe into the 3-point level in terms of content. And we do that with all of our the obviousness tests and making sure you've got good expository questions, and then going over outlines and going over drafts. But I mean, this is usually a big problem. Mechanics are usually a big problem early in drafts. A lot of times the overall plan or organization will be weak. Almost always sentences are not generally clear, concise, and appropriate. And that's because a lot of that stuff hasn't even been taught yet throughout the course. And that's why the course is a portfolio-based class where you return to drafts and continue working on them and continue developing them as you grow as a writer, as new things about writing get introduced to you and you practice it, and then you polish and perfect drafts. And the grade is not set in stone till the last day of class. Students are generally happy when they hear that. They're like, oh, great, I got till the end of the class to make my essays good. What they're not generally happy about, and they struggle to accept, is it's very rare that a student's first essay will be above a 2.0. If you could write a 3.0 without the majority of the class having been taught and without any feedback from me, you shouldn't be taking the class. You're taking the class to learn new skills that you didn't have before. And so naturally, your early drafts are going to be weak. Remember, those grades will be replaced with your later grades. The furthest along you get that draft, that's where the grade's going to be. Now I've had students say, well, what if my essay gets worse as I work on it? That almost never happens. It's very, very rare where that happens. And I always work with a student and say, hey, let's go back to the earlier draft because that was better. Okay. It's very rare that drafts actually get worse. So content, structure, style, and mechanics are it's a slightly artificial, but it's a way to break writing into 4 concrete areas that you need to focus on. So content, do I have good ideas? Are they clearly expressed? Are those ideas organized in a way that enhances the audience's understanding of the points you're trying to make? Is the style appropriate? And really, that's about clear, concise expression, which there's a lot of the classes built around learning, and mechanics. Am I following the standard rules of the English language, which are not easy to learn and often contradictory? So we've done a ton of work thus far in the class on content, right? Really thinking about what makes an expository topic expository, exploring your lives for good topics. There's a video out there about paragraph structure and the structure of essays. There will be videos coming about style and mechanics. But I want you to start thinking about these 4 areas, and I will come back and have more videos about this rubric, so we make sure we understand all parts of it. And make sure you ask me questions in class or come to office hours and ask questions if there are parts of the rubric that you're not understanding.